Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Carlos Torres, and I am the Executive Director of the Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations. Getting to this day, I apologize. Getting to this day took a lot of work, vision, and coordination, and commitment. But here we are, bringing attention to the work of protecting civil rights. This afternoon, I am very thankful and very grateful and proud to introduce our Mayor, Peduto.
Thank you, Director Torres. You know, we pride ourselves on being a welcoming city. We talk about how this is Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. But as we look around what's happening in this country, as we look around and see what's happening in this world, the very fabric of what Pittsburghers built the city upon is being torn apart. So it's at times like this that we have to reiterate and double down on the values that we hold sacred, that this is a welcoming city for all. And if any cases of discrimination or intimidation or any other factor would weigh in on a person based simply on who they are, this city will prosecute. We have a long history on human relations that goes beyond what this country has done in assuring and protecting the rights of everybody. And that goes back for decades. And at times like this, it is important that we all recognize and understand we're all the children or grandchildren of immigrants. We all have family members that could be considered to be categorized as something that someone would try to divide us by. But at the bottom, we're all Pittsburghers. As we can gather for sporting events and call ourselves one, we have to be able to do the same for all the differences that make us strong. You know, I had the opportunity the other night to have iftar dinner with a group of Turkish immigrants. And I use the term immigrants lightly because what's happening in Turkey right now is a political refugee situation. And at the table was a young couple that had to flee because they were being threatened with prison. Both federal judges from Istanbul, both now calling Pittsburgh home. Their passports have been taken. Soon their visas will expire. They can't leave this country, and they can't stay in this country. Pittsburgh is a welcoming place, and I had to reassure them that we welcome them and want them here. But that's happening all over. That's happening throughout this world. And if we're ever going to be able to seriously be able to change it, it's going to have to happen at a local level. What we're talking about today has to happen in cities throughout this country, in cities throughout this world. And so, Director, I thank you for the work that you and the Commission are doing to assure the people of Pittsburgh that we will do everything that we can to be a welcoming city for all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Commissioner Craig, who is the Commission Chair of the Commission on Human Relations. Commissioner Craig.
Thank you for having me. Welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Winford Craig, and I serve as the chair of the City of Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations. On this beautiful summer day, on this day of action, along with Mayor Peduto's administration and representation of the state of Pennsylvania, the Commission wants to remind the public that Pittsburgh is a welcoming city and that this Commission will continue to do its job to protect and uphold our essential civil rights laws. Since 1955, the City of Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations has worked to protect the civil rights of every person who live and visit this city. As you may know, in our city, every person must be treated fairly in all matters related to employment, housing, and public accommodation. Our commission will do its job. Our commitment is steadfast, and we will not waver under the misguided and the misleading executive orders, which is crafted with the possibilities of undermining the rights of our family members, friends, and neighbors. If you are experiencing any difficulties in treatment, please make an effort to contact us. The City of Pittsburgh Commissioner on Human Relations is a law enforcement commission that is in charge with enforcing the rule of law. We're not an advocacy, nor do we make laws, but we will enforce those laws vigorously to protect the rights of our constituents we serve. We as the Commission have a duty and an obligation to work with you and for you to protect those truths that are self-evident, that all men are created equal. The grounds we are standing on is hallowed grounds, consecrated by men, women, and children, by Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, Muslims, Native Americans, blacks, whites, Asians, and others, with the blood they shed at the altar of freedom. There's great works ahead of us. As President Lincoln stated in the Gettysburg Address, we are here highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation shall have a new birth of freedom, and that this government of the people, by the people, shall not perish from this earth. May God bless this city, this state, this country, and all of us. Thank you.
Now it is my pleasure to introduce our colleague, our partner in this work, Mr. Lyle Woods.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lyle Wood, and I'm the Regional Director for the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, the Pittsburgh Regional Office. The Commission has under its jurisdiction 26 counties in this third of the state, along with our central office, our Harrisburg office, and our Philadelphia office that comprises the other two-thirds jurisdictional cover of the Commonwealth. A lot of times people would ask me, why the Commission? Why are you here? We enforce the Human Relations Act for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that was first promulgated in October of 1955, along with the City Commission. You see that while we're partners, we were ahead of the curve in terms of guaranteeing the rights of the citizens of the City of Pittsburgh and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The Human Relations Commission enforces the Human Relations Act and the Pennsylvania Fair Educational Opportunities Act with regards to equal access and equal opportunity in education. The practice or the policy of discrimination, as far as the Commission is concerned, foments this domestic strife and unrest, threatens the civil rights and privileges of the inhabitants of the Commonwealth, and undermines the foundations of a free and democratic state. The mission of the Commission is to eliminate any and all unlawful discrimination, period. No ifs, ands, and buts. We do that. You know, we think about a lot of the things that are happening, particularly post-election. We had one of our Supreme Court justices, the Chief Justice, talk about post-racial. From what we see, and I'm sure what Director Torres sees, there is no post-racial. There's always been that problem. There's always been illegal discrimination within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And we, again, will eliminate any unlawful discrimination within the Commonwealth. Under the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act, our jurisdiction covers employment, public accommodations, housing and commercial property, and education. It is against the law for anyone to discriminate against you because you are a member of a certain group. We call those groups protected classes. Those protected classes would be individuals who are by race, by color, by age, which is 40 and above, by gender, by disability, by religion, by ancestry, by national origin, by familial status, which is the presence of minor children under the age of 18, particularly in the area of housing, retaliation for anyone who has caused a harm due to their having participated in an activity that's protected under the Act, or has protested an action that is deemed discriminatory under the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act. Possession of a GED for employment purposes, and the use of a guide or support animal for the known association with a person with a disability. That's very important, particularly in the areas of employment and housing. If you look at an area like Pittsburgh that has a very abundant, relatively reasonable housing stock, and with a lot of the development that's taking place now, we wrestle with issues of equity. We wrestle with issues of affordable versus low income. We see individuals who have lived in neighborhoods for generations, for decades, being pushed out by some of the development. And it's important for us to be able to ensure that those individuals have their rights addressed. We have an ability to adjudicate any types of discrimination that takes place. With our statute, we have a particular remedy. When someone believes they have been discriminated against and files a complaint with the Human Relations Commission, we have an ability, if that complaint is jurisdictional, if they have standing to file and it's filed within 180 days of the act of harm, we will take that case. We will actually draft a complaint, which for us is a legal pleading. That complaint will be served on parties, and our investigative staff will investigate that complaint. If we find that there is probable cause to believe that a legal act has taken place, we will prosecute that case. We will take it forward to a public hearing. And there is remedy, which is the other important thing for any act of discrimination that we can determine either through our hearing examiners in housing cases, in front of our panel of commissioners, the hearing examiner, or in front of a senior judge in Commonwealth Court, and there are substantial penalties. Our acts have teeth, and we can ameliorate discrimination as it takes place. This is important in our society. I think that what we see last week, unfortunately, in Portland, what we've seen happen to LeBron James, what we've seen happen in our schools, what we've seen happen since the Pandora's box of discrimination and racism and bigotry have been opened up, people need to have their grievances redressed in a peaceful manner, in a judicial manner. You know, I often think about quotations like people from Martin Niemöller, who basically said, first they came for the socialists, I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists. I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews. I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me. There was no one left to speak for me. The Commission, the Pittsburgh City Commission, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, speaks for the citizens of the Commonwealth to assure that their rights as citizens are being met and they are not being legally discriminated against. We think about a lot of the people who come to our fair city. So reportedly one of the greatest cities, and it is, in the world. One of the greatest cities I've certainly been to in my travels around the world. We have a lot of new people here. I think about Matthew a lot of times when it says, I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I think that one of the great endearing things about Pittsburgh is the fact that we welcome people. We welcome people on their merits. We welcome people and show them great hospitality. When people are not welcomed, when they are disparaged, when they are discriminated against and caused harm, that is when we jump into action and attempt to equalize the situation and adjudicate any that comes up. We hope and we think and we would like to believe that, like Lincoln, who was mentioned earlier, on his first inaugural address, talked about the better angels of our nature. We always want all citizens to act with the better angels of their nature in mind. But when they don't and they are discriminated against and they are caused to harm, then they can turn to the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission or the City of Pittsburgh Commission, our great partners, to try to see if we can grant them a measure of justice. Thank you very much. You have a good afternoon.
Now it is my great pleasure to introduce Wasim Mohammed, who is the Executive Director of the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh.
Hi Hi everyone, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. My name is Wasi Muhammad, and I'm the Executive Director of the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh, and it's the holy month of Ramadan, and it's a time where in our religion, we reconnect with God, we reconnect with our brothers and sisters. And today, I think it is important to remember that because people choose to practice particular religions, because they have particular beliefs, sometimes they face discrimination. They face ethnic intimidation. They have to deal with different things, and it comes in many forms. Obviously, in this day and age, to be Muslim, I can speak from that experience at least. Other religions may have related experiences that every day you'll probably face something or read about something that's kind of negative towards the religion, right? And unfortunately, how it is that a lot of this stuff that we just have to stomach. It's the reality of it. We respect everybody's free speech and everybody's entitled to their opinion, but at some point it crosses a line, right? Yes, you can have a negative opinion of our religion, and I respect your right to have that in this country. But for example, Carnegie Mellon University did a study, our own Carnegie Mellon, that showed that whenever they had a job application, exact same resume, whenever they had a Muslim name and somebody who on their social media identified as Muslim versus a Christian name and somebody who identified as Christian, the callbacks for interviews were at 17% when you're Christian and 2% when you're Muslim. Right? Whenever you go and there's an apartment for rent and you show up and then you introduce yourself, suddenly there's another tenant that had taken it. Right? Or you apply to a job and you show up in a headscarf and suddenly it's been filled, or we're going to start hiring later, or you want to get a place and you have to put 6 months down for a deposit. Right? It's not always about you being physically assaulted or attacked or verbally abused or anything like that. Whenever your discrimination happens against a religion, it can happen in many forms. And then yes, there is a mistrust that some people have about reporting these things. There is a sense that we have to grin and bear it. Our ancestors have gone through a lot more. This is our test of this age. But it still remains true that if we don't speak up when it is appropriate, then this stuff will never change. If we don't report it, what we can, then that means our kids will face the exact same things with the exact same way, and nothing will change because we didn't speak up when it was our chance to speak up. It isn't just about you whenever it is. Yes, you can bear it, but think about the rest of the community whenever things like this happen. And things like this do happen every single day, and running a community center, I can tell you that. And a lot of people want to move on from it. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want this to become bigger, and they don't necessarily think the system is here to help them. And what I wanted to make clear today especially is that Commission on Human Relations, made up of all these people from these protected classes that face discrimination and that faced it throughout their lives and have had their brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers face this discrimination, will absolutely stand up for other community members just like them. This is not an entity you should be afraid of. This is one that will be happy to take your call. And if you're not even sure if it falls in a category of something that can be taken care of by the Commission, it doesn't hurt to call. We won't charge you. So please make that call. Think about yourself, your family, the community. It makes a difference now. It makes a difference now, and it makes a difference for the next generation. And I encourage people to communicate with the Commission, learn more about what it's doing, and learn more about what we can do to stop this right now before it gets any worse. So thank you so much. Ramadan Mubarak, everyone. I hope this month brings everybody closer to God and closer to whatever your family that you have or whatever brothers and sisters in the community you have, and not just Muslims. And also anybody who wants to come to the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh to join an iftar and talk about these issues, you're welcome to in Oakland, Bigelow Boulevard, 4100. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Commissioner Ariel.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. Always difficult to follow Wasi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bibit Ariel, and I have the great privilege of serving on Governor Wolf's Advisory Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs, where I serve as Vice Chair and the Chair of the Schools That Teach Committee. The mission of the Commission is to ensure that state government is accessible and accountable to the diverse AAPI communities in Pennsylvania. And within that, the Schools That Teach Committee has focused our efforts on anti-bullying, addressing issues like language access for students and their families, and advocating for a more inclusive and diverse curriculum. And in light of the recent civil rights issues, we've put a greater emphasis on addressing issues of hate crime, bullying in school, and how to work with the communities in order to allay fears. The type of discrimination we're seeing, and this is across Pittsburgh, the state, and the entire nation, comes in all forms. It can be from simple name-calling to constant bullying to threats of violence to real violence against people based on nationality, religion, skin color, sexual orientation, and much more. These incidents are happening on the way to school. They're happening inside schools. They're happening on the way to work, and even happening when you're buying groceries and everywhere in between. And unfortunately, there are even other forms of discrimination that are perhaps even more insidious because they happen within the systems that we live, work, and learn within. For example, it is in the failure to provide equitable access to education and opportunities based on national origin, language access, or a disability. What this does is create an environment where students feel invisible in their schools and their parents feel excluded from their children's education, thus alienating these most vulnerable communities. And unfortunately, the data on issues like bullying and crimes, as mentioned by Wasi and others, is not reflective of the real gravity of the situation. For example, the Department of Education constantly puts out data on bullying in school districts, and for many years, the number of incidents are 0 for many school districts, and we know that, frankly, is not the case. So having said that, what are some of these reasons that people fail to report? And I think Wasi identified a couple of them. But one of the key reasons is many people may not know how. And even if they did, they do not feel that reporting these issues will result in any tangible, meaningful changes. They do not feel safe in reporting these incidents. And in some cases, even if they wanted to or willing to, issues like language access may prevent them from being able to file these complaints. So there are a lot of these issues that we have to tackle when we want to better understand the scope and gravity of the issues that we're really dealing with. The Governor's Advisory Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs is committed to working with our communities, working with the Human Relations Commissions both in Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania, working with great organizations like the Islamic Center of Pittsburgh and any other institutions of faith, community organizations, to ensure that communities have access to equitable services and protection. We're not here asking for special services or special treatment. We're asking to protect civil rights, rights that are guaranteed to all of us, not just some of us. I came here from a different country, but I've lived here for more than 28 years now. I feel like a Pittsburgher, I feel like a Pennsylvanian, and it's very important that we make sure that everybody that comes to Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania feels that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So, how did we get here? The truth of the matter is that for over a month now, the Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations has been reaching out to other Human Relations Commission and Human Rights Commissions across the country to encourage them to take this day of action, June 1st as a day of action. We have seen in the national news and in the local news many instances of individuals being treated differently because of the religion they practice, or the religion that someone thinks they practice, because the way they look, because the way they dress, because they may have an accent like I do. And we wanted to bring attention to the issue of civil rights protections. We, as an institution that has been around for over 60 years, will continue to do our job despite efforts out of Washington, D.C. to minimize the civil rights of peoples in our community, our friends, our neighbors, our family members. We are here. We have been here, and we will continue to be here. So we ask these other institutions that on June 1st, they stand up, they be visible, they be loud, and that they will remind members of their respective communities that despite those efforts that are coming out of Washington, D.C., they will not waver in their commitment to protect the civil rights of all residents in their communities. We will continue to work to eliminate discrimination wherever it may happen, and we will continue to remind people that no executive order will prevent us from doing our job. We have, as a Commission on Human Relations, thank you. As the Commission on Human Relations, we have a long history of being at the forefront of protecting the civil rights of all of our people, whether they have been here for 5 generations or 5 days. And we will continue to do that. With the support of the mayor and the member of the city council, our partners at the state, and partners in the community, we will continue to fight discrimination. Now, I want to let you know that on June 30th, in the City Council chambers, we will be having a public hearing to continue this conversation. So we are encouraging individuals from the community, if they have experienced discrimination or they have witnessed discrimination, to please step forward and let the Commission know. We want to know what is happening locally so we can take action. We have flyers available about the June 30th event, so if you would like to know more, please let us know. Thank you so much for coming today. We really appreciate your support, and have a great afternoon.